So hello, I'm standing in front of what I hope is going to be the latest and quite exciting chapter in the 150 plus year history of the F&WHR Railway's involvement with the Double Fairlie locomotive. For those of you who don't know, that started in 1869 with Little Wonder. Little Wonder, although very successful and proving the concept of Robert Fairlie's ideas, was still very much a prototype, and there are a number of shortcomings in the design which Charles Easton Spooner and his son George Percy Spooner worked very hard over the next 25 years to iron out and eliminate. And that resulted in the pinnacle of Victorian Fairlie design, Livingston Thompson, later known as Taliesin and later still known as the Earl of Merioneth, which is now in the York Railway Museum. Many of those lessons over the years were quietly forgotten and lost. So when the railway built two new double-engine boilers at the end of the 1960s, they were basically Linder and Blanche boilers back to back. There were a number of faults with them. They've served the railway well over the last 40-odd years, 45 years. But there are a number of faults which we wouldn't want to repeat in replacing the boilers. So they were parallel boilers, and that caused an awful lot of problems, maintenance issues with the throat plates. So when we built David Lloyd George in the early 1990s, we went back to a tapered boiler. Now the Spooners had used a special type of boiler called a wagon top, which had flat sides but was tapered at the top. Now we have a slightly larger loading gauge, we can go to a full conical taper on the boiler, and that's what we used with David Lloyd George. That's much stronger, it is much more maintenance free, so that has proved itself over the last 30 years, and in building James Spooner we have repeated that exercise, and so we've got a boiler that is very, very similar to David Lloyd George's, but is designed to fit in the cradles and with the tanks of Merthin Emrys, and this cradle which we've had built specially for James Spooner, so there's much more interchangeability between the different engines. The company board decided when it was looking at its future for double engines that whilst it might be possible to do some more work to the Earl of Merioneth, it would actually damage the iconic, unique shape of the Earl. So we decided, also for good commercial reasons, to cut new metal wherever we could to give a much more longer lasting, reliable and robust engine. So this engine here, I'm standing on the driver's side of the footplate, is going to be substantially new. The whole idea is that the boiler is new, the tanks are new, the smoke boxes are new, all the fittings, wherever possible, will be new. It may be in the very short term we'd have to borrow one or two small components from the Earl, but the intention is to keep the Earl as complete as possible so that at some future date we could actually get that going again, probably not as a frontline engine, but as an engine to show the development of the Double Fairlie on the railway. This is now making very good progress. As you can see, the boiler is complete. It's got the regulators fitted inside the domes. The domes are on. The smoke boxes are complete. They have the superheaters in, the tubes are all in, the spark arresters are in. One chimney is fixed on, the other one is attached with some tape, but is making good progress. The tanks are now complete. They obviously need to be painted. They are fitted on at the moment so that we can take the measurements just to make sure that the cab, when the cab profiles are ordered, will fit and we don't have to have any messing around. So the tanks are on at the moment just to measure up the components for the cab, and then they will be removed. We will complete the plumbing. There's quite a lot of plumbing to be done on an engine like this, and then the components will be painted, tested, and hopefully away they go. So good progress, very pleased to see the way she's looking at the moment, and can't wait to see her in steam. Thank you very much.
Right, so welcome to Dinas depot, where, as you can see behind me, 130 is just having an initial steam test after the cold boiler exam it had a couple of weeks ago. We're doing our own steam test today to make sure that all is well for when the boiler inspector comes back next week to do an official steam test. We're doing 87 today, and also 130 today, this one, and we'll be doing 87 as well, having a steam test next week. So all the attention is on these two engines, 130 and 87, to get them ready for the season, which starts on the, I think it's the 26th of March. Trains start running, so we've got to be ready for then. As you can see with 130, the rear bunker is removed at the moment. It's just over there. That's because there were a number of leaks in the engine unit that could only be got at with the bunker out of the way. So they want to do a steam test today with the bunker off, so they can see that the main steam pipe leak has been properly sorted out. And then the bunker will obviously go back on as well. So yes, so here's a view you don't get to see very often. The pipe running across the top of the bogie is the main steam pipe that supplies steam to the cylinders. In here, at the point of pivoting of the engine unit under the boiler unit, there's a ball joint. That ball joint's been apart and been serviced. You can see this pipe here is an oil feed to the ball joint. There's a second oil feed as well. So you can see by the new bolts there that this pipe's been out to allow the ball joint to be worked on. The other area that's been worked on is in here. If you have a look in the middle there, you can see a Y piece where the main steam pipe divides into two pipes to go one to each cylinder. There was a leak on this Y joint, and as you can see, it's the flange joints are bolted together with lens rings between the flanges, which are they're rings that are they're part of a spherical shape, so they can align themselves with the chamfers in the edges of the flanges. So anyway, there was a leak there. That's now been dealt with, hopefully, so we'll see when we put the steam on that hopefully there won't be any leakage out of there. So this arm here we're looking at, again, you can't normally see it, so I thought we'd have a look at it now. It's part of the reversing gear, and it comes from a crank, again right on the pivot point, which is under that little cover with a round hole in the middle. It's on the point of pivot so that the reversing of the engine isn't affected by the loco turning. So the shaft from the reverser is here, goes across to the centre and the crank there. It's operated by this reversing shaft, and it then moves the arm, which then moves this shaft, which then lifts up and down the valve gear on either side of the engine. And so if I get in and operate it, you can see what happens. Nobody's got their fingers in anything, have they? No. Right, so we go to forward gear. Now the engine's in forward, or backwards for that engine unit, and then I'll go back the other way. And that would take the engine backwards. And mid-gear. Right, here we have Garrett number 87. Was in service last year. It'll be in service again this year. It's just having, it's had the cold boiler exam by the boiler inspector, which means the dome top is off. The washout plugs have all been out of the boiler and they've now been replaced. Additionally, the fire grate has been replaced on 87 because it's fairly badly burnt. You can see the old grate down here. You can see the fire bar fingers. See this this burning means they're thinner. This is not too bad. There's probably some reusable parts in there, but we've chosen to put a complete new grate in at 87 at the moment because it should be reliable for at least a season, probably 2 seasons. I think the old one had done 2 years in service. Yeah, so you can see the nice new rocking grate. Those sections with the fingers, they will all rock so that the fireman can clean the fire and drop the fire into the ash pan at the end of the day. Also, you can see at the sides there are stainless steel angles that will support the brick arch when we get around to fitting it, which is a job for later today, I think. So there's each side can be rocked independently so that you can clean the fire on one side and then move the remaining fire over onto the side that you've cleaned, and then do likewise on the other side, which is a very useful arrangement as compared to conventional fire bars. We've modified this arrangement to be an all rocking grate, whereas originally, as the locos were designed for use in South Africa, they had a two drop sections where instead of just rocking there was a larger piece of grate that actually folded down and allowed you to drop the fire in one go. But we had some trouble with that, and to be honest, it's better to just have an all rocking grate, which is what we have now. So now the chaps here are just putting this all back together. So the new grate is in. The brick arch has to go in because that came out, again it was in poor condition. Say the dome top needs to go back on. I think all the washout plugs are in. So next week it'll be steamed for the boiler inspector. And then also there's some mechanical work going on. As you can see, the connecting rod is removed and some of the coupling rods are removed. There's a problem with a return crank bearing on the eccentric rod, so that's been replaced, and also some of the bushes in the rods were loose, so they've been refitted and generally sorted out. This is fairly minor mechanical work, but still now is the time to do it when the loco is not in traffic, so hopefully it'll be reliable for the season. Right, here we have one of 143's power units. It's been to Boston Lodge, had an overhaul. It was used under 138 latterly, but now it's going under 143. Similarly with the other end power unit, that's been to Boston Lodge, had a mechanical overhaul, and as I say, these units will go under this engine when it's ready. The boiler unit now is coming along well. The cladding is being fitted, the ash pans are on, the spark arrestor is in. The old cladding from 143's old boiler fitted in some places but not in others, so some pieces we're having to modify slightly to fit. Some pieces are having to have new pieces because they just don't fit at all. So there's a fair bit of work fitting the cladding, and that's what's taking up the time on the job at the moment. If you have a look at the boiler, you can see the back end there is bare of cladding. That's because the cladding at the back has been finished and that's gone to Boston Lodge paint shop to be painted. So the guys are working forward with the cladding, and then the next job will be to do all the loco's plumbing. So there's a fair bit of pipe work to go on. Injector steam pipes, all the other auxiliary steam pipes, all those have got to go on. So it's a fairly large and slow job, because again the pipe work, although it's there and it should in theory be able to be swapped straight over, inevitably there's some work has to be done on the pipe. If it's a copper pipe, it might need annealing, and it might need the shape adjusting slightly to fit the different boiler and the rearranged parts in that area. So yeah, so it's a big job, but we hope it'll be 143 will be out in traffic this year sometime. Here are the washout plugs for 143's boiler. and also the fusible plugs. Yeah, so underneath the box of washout plugs is the new firehole door for 143, which the old door was okay, but it was the body was cracked. So we've taken the opportunity of fabricating a complete new door, which will hopefully be reliable for many years to come. This boiler is South African Railways number 711, and it was latterly used in South Africa on number 127, which is the garret that went to the Puffing Billy Railway. Anyway, Puffing Billy decided to build a completely new boiler for their loco, so they actually donated this boiler to us, which is rather good, although obviously it needed a fair amount of work at loco maintenance services in Loughborough. So it's had quite a few heavy repairs. So this boiler now is probably almost as good as new. But there's, say, large areas were renewed in Loughborough. New washout plug bosses. This part of the barrel here is all new. The front tube plate is new. So it was a heavy, very heavy repair, but say should be good for probably 20-30 years without more major work. This is NG15 number 134. There's a lot of work going on this loco at the moment. There's revived volunteer working parties have been regularly happening at weekends, with quite a number of volunteers turning up to do work on the loco, aided by permanent staff. And the boiler is away at Loughborough, having extensive repairs done, similar to those I just described for the boiler for 143. The chassis, as you can see, is part way through a major overhaul. There's work going on all aspects. For instance, the ash pan for the loco is we've just hopefully now finalised the design for that. It's an improved, well, we think it'll be improved on the South African Railways design. It's been 3D modelled. The ash pan will be attached to the bottom of the firebox rather than just resting in the loco frames. Excuse me, which will make it easier to seal and therefore the loco less likely to throw sparks. So we'll be ordering materials to fabricate that shortly, hopefully. I say there's work on the axle boxes has just been finished. There's some welding to do on the stretcher between the cylinders. In the goods shed, the tender is being worked on. The bogie overhaul has been finished. The tender chassis is having some work on the rear end for the draw gear, and on the front end to mate up with the new tank body that we have. So things are really moving along on the NG15. But no doubt, I'm sure on the NG15 website there'll be some links to more detailed updates there for you.